Prepare to be captivated by the business story of the week, hosted by me, Shaheen Shan. Join us on a journey through the twists and turns of entrepreneurial triumphs and setbacks. Immerse yourself in the narrative and witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. This is Business Story of the Week.
And welcome back, folks. Welcome back to Business Story of the Week. I am your host, Joshua, and here we are again, bringing you the best experts in their fields. And, we always try to look for the guests that will motivate you guys. And, I can't think of a more appropriate guest, and she is perfect for what we do and what we talk about here on the show. We talk about, everyone knows that we talk about more than just business, but it would be nice to always come back to that roots. And we know that you, our audience and listeners, are always looking for that next motivation in their entrepreneurial journey, in their business journey. And today we have the perfect guest for that. Sally Faran is a pricing expert. Coming from 25 years of accounting and business, she now helps small businesses get to grips with their numbers and pricing. I love that keyword there, get to grips. We need to get into that. Sally set up her business to help you, our audience and listeners, to understand your pricing and grow their income, grow their business. Sally is the founder of Business Growth by Numbers, a platform dedicated to providing businesses with clarity, business owners, company with actionable insights into their financial management, financial health. Sally specializes in untangling these company accounts, creating transparent management, empowering business owners to understand and manage their finances effectively. She is also passionate about helping micro businesses set up correctly from the start through her online courses. And today she's going to share us that wisdom, and you are going to find out, ladies and gentlemen, why she is actually the perfect guest for this topic today. Sally, the pricing queen, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. Thanks for having me. Great introduction.
Thank you. I'm pretty excited. Again, I love the name, the pricing queen, Sally Faran. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to get into this. But Sally, before we really get into this, the name of the show is Business Story of the Week. But the very essence of any business and on any entrepreneurial journey, how we unravel all of this, it really starts with the story, right? That is the root of everything. So Sally, where did it all begin for you? Right? Like when you were any childhood memories, perhaps any pivotal moment experience of your life where you said, oh, I love numbers. I'm going to do accounting for the rest of my life, right? So if anything happened in your life that you decided this is it, what is the story of Sally, the pricing queen Faran?
So actually, my dad's an accountant. So there was always a thought that I would follow in his footsteps. And I spent a lot of time resisting. So actually, I did go and do a business studies degree because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in business, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought I like to do marketing or HR. And then I started to find that I was best at the accounting, and then I was like, okay, actually this is definitely my thing.
There you go.
But I did resist for a really, really long time, and then I went and did a placement at a company and went, oh, actually no, this is my thing.
Okay, there you go. So throughout the whole time you were studying, you were in college, you were going through all these, and you said, nah, I'm not going to follow my dad's footsteps. So when you actually got into a company, that's when it actually started falling into place to you. Was there an exact pivotal moment where you realized that was it?
I actually think it was during my last year at university where I kind of went, actually, I'm good at, these are the things I'm good at. Like, I really like the marketing, but actually I'm not brilliant at that sort of stuff. And actually the stuff that I'm good at may not be what I think is going to be the glamorous career, but actually has proved to be really, I find really interesting. But also that kind of, I think I got into a company and went, right, I don't want to be an audit accountant. I don't want to be somebody who comes in once a year, who looks at the accounts and does the taxes. Okay. What I want is to be inside people's businesses, which is where the interest is.
Okay. I love that. I love that you pointed out. I love the keyword is like glamorous, right? Because we're all thinking marketing, right? Glamorous. Like we're all thinking about all these ideas. It's like accounting, numbers, nothing is glamorous about that. But you pursued it in such a way with your business, founding growth by numbers, business growth by numbers rather. Um, and you said like you not only help them with accounting, but you actually go deep into their businesses and try to provide financial clarity. Could you talk to us a little bit about this and how you went about establishing and founding business growth by numbers?
Yeah, so I'd always worked in industry. I worked for the Guinness Book of Records. I worked for Channel 4, which is a big TV company. So I'd worked in all sorts of, and Philips Electronics, making irons and toasters and stuff like that. So I'd worked in really varied industries.
Right.
And I had my children. And I went, actually working 3 days a week does not work very well. It's quite hard. So actually I just stopped work for a bit because it was just like actually every week you'd be like getting to the end of your 3 days and going, oh, I can't quite manage it. So I'd be like, right, okay, like back next week. So I stopped for a bit. And then I said, every company that I wanted to work for was wanting more and more days. I was like, oh no, let's not do that. So I set up on my own, offering similar services to the ones I've been working in companies. So I started off, working through an agency where I worked doing but I work as, and I still do some of that now, which is where I work as a kind of part-time finance director, where I go in for I might work for them 1, 2, 3, 4 days a month, where I go in, I look at their numbers, I help them understand them. So the main thing I do is go to meetings and say, these are the numbers you should care about.
Right.
And I do that with businesses, right from businesses like my own, which is just me, right through to, kind of million pound revenue businesses. And then because above that, they start to need a more permanent finance director once you get into a more complex business. But also that a lot of service businesses need a lot of the biggest problem is pricing. When you're looking at it, like particularly for micro businesses, you're looking at it going, actually, you're just not charging enough for what you're doing because you've got other costs other than just paying yourself. You're running a business.
That's true.
So I got I niched much more into pricing over time as well, because that's been the biggest issue, really.
And there's a lot more number of small businesses that are struggling with their numbers than there are big businesses who aren't really who's quite got their figures figured out, right? So now you found this kind of small businesses, their challenge, pricing strategy, very, very clear. And in one of your early podcasts, episode number 3, you said never price by the hour, right? You said that. Can you elaborate? Never price by the hour, and that is one of the philosophies that you share. Can you elaborate why it's such a challenge for small businesses to move away by pricing from by the hour and instead opt for fixed pricing? Why is that such a challenge for small business models?
Well, I think it's part of it is so that if you take one thing away from today, that is my main thing, is do not price by the hour. So that pricing by the hour, as you get more efficient, you get paid less. So my virtual assistant charges me by the hour, even though I have tried to encourage her not to. She charges me by the hour and has done forever. But she must have got better. She's worked for me for 4 years. So she must have got more efficient. So she actually is charging me less time than she was originally. So you get better at these things. You maybe standardize your processes. So you might say, well, look, actually, if I move to fixed pricing, I go, well, actually, I can standardize my processes entirely. And I think when you're on hourly rate, you can only really bill in arrears. So you can only bill at the end of a month or the end of a project. The client doesn't really know how much they're being charged. And sometimes you can get massive overruns. People stick to it, an hourly or daily rate, as a bit of a thing because they're kind of like, well, I can charge for everything I do. But you can get into a lot of quibbles about how much time such and such took you, or I didn't expect that it was going to take that long. And it's like, but that's, it's like, no, you need to say this is a fixed fee for the work I am doing and work that through. But people are frightened of moving away from hourly rate because there's a danger you get a lot of, what I would call scope creep or slippage in projects where you end up doing much more than you originally planned and don't get paid for it.
Yes,
But there
of
are ways
course.
around that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's often why people don't charge by the hour. But if you're charging by the hour, I just think that you're constantly eroding your value, because you always get
Oh, I
quicker,
love that.
more efficient. And also, if you want to outsource and stuff like that, it gets more and more complicated to do that, because you're outsourcing
Of course.
a different value of somebody's time.
Yes, yes, that's true. And I love how I love that keyword. You're actually eroding your value because you get better, but you're still charging by the hour. You're actually crippling yourself in such a way. You're not giving yourself room to grow, and you're not also giving yourself that opportunity to scale, so to speak. And you mentioned that it's such a common thing, right? To like, I don't want to price fixed price because this is just it's two things, right? On one side, if you're priced by the hour, the client's going to be like, "Oh, what did you do in these hours?" Like they're gonna be very picky in your time. Like, did you really do this within these hours? That how much? Why did it take you this long? And these are very difficult conversation. But on the other end of the spectrum, you also have that difficult conversation where you're like, that's your fixed price, and what are you going to give me in that value, right? What are your services? What's the value that you're going to give me in that fixed price? And people would rather take the other spectrum because it's a much more difficult conversation to try and value yourself and try to actually give what you're worth. And I remember that this is one of your I love this. One of your posts on LinkedIn said that never never price what you're worth. I remember that. I think that's one of your posts. Never price what you're worth. And it's a bad quote. Tell us why that is, because it's not about your worth. It's about the value of your service. But how do we get around that, Sally?
So part of it is trying really hard to separate, and it is hard to separate what your value is from your price. Your price does not
Right.
say anything about your value as an individual. What it says is that's the
Yes.
value of what you give. And what you have to start thinking about when you move to fixed pricing is a few things. So you
Mhm.
have to think a bit about boundaries. You have to
Right.
think so you just have to think quite a lot. You just have to think very differently, and you have to say, well, the outcome of this fixed thing is this.
Yes.
So it might be
Yes.
you say, well, look, actually, I run a marketing campaign. There's an easy one to do,
Mhm.
which is I run you a marketing campaign, and that marketing campaign will cost you $5,000, right? And you say,
Right.
for that, I will do these outcomes.
Right.
Now, you might
Right.
not be able to guarantee a certain return on investment and stuff like that, but you might be able to say, well, this is what I will do for you. And that's
Mhm.
not, this is how many days I'm working. It's not, this is how many hours. This is not all the nitty gritty.
No.
This is what will you get if you spend $5,000 with me? What do you
Mhm.
get? What is the result that brings
Yes.
and the transformation that brings for
Yes.
your business?
Yes.
So it comes away from I'm working for you for this number of hours and that's my
There
value
you go.
to
Mhm.
the service that I offer provides it is valued at this. And it is hard to judge what that value is.
Mhm.
And the starter for 10 might be, right, how many hours
Mhm.
do I think this is going to take me? This is how much I charge by the hour, multiply it
Right.
up, and then maybe add 10 or 20% for a bit of kind of
Yep.
round the
Wiggle room.
edges. So that
Uh-huh.
might be a starting point. But
Mhm.
I have definitely moved more recently. For me, I've started moving towards much higher pricing, like
Yes, there
particularly
we
for things
go.
like
Mhm.
training. So training is quite a tricky one. You know, you kind of go, well, I'm
Mhm.
turning up for 2 hours or half a day's training, but the preparation that takes, the experience and knowledge that you bring from that means that that's valued at way higher than
Exactly.
3 hours of my time. So you have to
Absolutely.
really think about what is the value, you know, and particularly if you're training like 10, 12 people,
Of course.
suddenly the cost per person is kind of tiny, and you're like, well, actually I need
Of
to
course.
make that needs to, you know, the return on that for the company is enormous if they don't have to train those
Mhm.
people individually, say. So it's really
Mhm.
thinking about and asking the questions when you're talking to a prospective client of what is it they actually are trying to get out of it, how much money
Yes.
have they got, if they're corporate
Yes.
clients, how much money have they got to spend,
Uh-huh.
and kind of working through that kind of, well, what information do you need to be able to price something? I think a lot of the time we come away from kind of sales calls or
Right.
preliminary chats going, I don't have enough information to be able
Right.
to price this, and
Mm-hmm.
some of it is just you
Mm-hmm.
get better over time. Sometimes
Yes.
I send
Yes.
a price and they come back about 2 minutes later, and you go, right, well, that was too cheap, because they came back 30 seconds after you proceeded. Like, yes, please, thank you very much. And you're like, oh
Yes.
no.
Let's go.
But also, I think dissociating from, if people say they don't want to work with you because it's
Right.
too expensive, you just say, that's
Right.
fine. Thank you very much. Now,
That's
if you
fine.
need the
Precisely.
work, you might decide that you'll take a lower paid piece of work, or
Mm-hmm.
you say, look, I'll
Mm-hmm.
take this bit out and we could have it for less. You could have a smaller
Yes.
package. But I often talk
Precisely.
about trying to have like 2 or 3 packages in your business, which is a
Yep.
kind of
There you
middle
go.
tier, which is the one you want most people to have, a kind of VIP, which might be more of your time, and then a kind of
Yes.
lighter touch one that you could kind of go, well, look, this is my lighter touch option, but these are the things you
Mm-hmm.
don't get for that. And by having a fixed
Mm-hmm.
price, you set very clear, this is what I do offer as part of that, and this is what I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were someone who did like a retainer, let's say, and retainers are a funny
Yes.
thing, because I don't think you should do those in hours or anything like that. So let's say I'm a part-time finance director, I'm going to do that on a monthly fee basis. I say, I
Yes.
will produce your accounts, I will come to a meeting and talk you through it, I'll come to the board meeting, whatever those 5 things are, but that's a
Yes.
fixed fee, and that's what that covers. If you wanted me to come to a
Precisely.
company away day, that is there's another layer on that.
There you go.
So it's
Yes, of
kind of
course.
what fixed pricing helps you do, I think, definitely, is to give you a boundary around, this is what I'm offering you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then when somebody comes and says, could you do this? And you're like, well, that's not within scope. It's much easier to go, that's not
Precisely.
within scope.
There you go. There you
This is
go.
going to be an extra cost. Or you might say, well, this time I'm going to do that as a bit of goodwill, but next time that'll be chargeable. It gives you a much
That's true.
firmer footing. The client knows how
Yes.
much it's going to be, and you just have to make sure that you price carefully, that you don't lose out. And that just takes
Yes.
practice.
Yes. That's very important too, because now, okay, first of all, those are very grounded points that you just said, because it's always about like, how do I move away from the hourly? But the way you said it is like, if you move away from the hourly, you're actually taking out yourself out of that situation where I'm working for you, instead of giving your value. This is my expertise, and this is the value I'm offering. I love that you said you are putting your boundaries in that package where you say, hey, this is what I'm good at, and this is the value, and this is how I can transform your business and how I can transform your organization. It's almost like a, how you call this, like a skill, right? Like a as if like carpentry or all the other
Yeah.
skills, like because you're not paying the guy for that hour right then and there. You're paying for their experience that they learned throughout the entire years that they've been good at carpentry, and they can finish the work under an hour. And that's kind of like similar too, because in one of your episode number 27, you said the easiest way to earn more is to up your price. And that's such a simple concept, right? Just put up your price, know what value you are offering. Um, but you said it's not just about pricing that you offer, right? You also talk about individuals gaining mental clarity or financial clarity. Why do you think it's so hard for them to just up their price? What do you think is the biggest challenge, and how we can overcome that?
Well, I think a lot of people that come into their own businesses, particularly in the early stages, and if it's just you,
Mhm.
you're so used to being paid a salary. You're used to being paid
Yes,
a
yes.
kind of hourly, daily, monthly rate. And I think you move
Mhm.
into that hourly, monthly, daily rate, and it's the same thing. And
Yes.
I think it's kind of
Mhm.
moving from being a freelancer or a
Yes.
contractor, however you want to call it, into being the CEO of your business a bit, even if it's just you,
Yes.
but kind of taking that mindset, which is actually, if I paid someone else to do this, how would I sell
Mhm.
it then? So you stop thinking
Right.
about it being like your own stuff, but it is that thing of, you've got people go, oh, well, I haven't got very much experience. I'm like, you've had a job for 25 years doing whatever you did, or,
Mhm.
5 years or
Mhm.
whatever it is. You're most people who go self-employed generally, unless they have a massive passion project. But even then, they've probably been doing it as a side hustle for a while. So
Uh-huh,
it's
uh-huh.
really moving it and going, right, okay, actually, this is not about me. This is about what my business is selling. And that's a massive mindset shift, I think. And I think it is hard.
Right,
I think
right.
people come from that kind of, you're remunerated for what you earn monthly is, you're doing a job and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
a lot of companies want you to charge by the day or by the hour. If you go and work for a
Of course.
company as a contractor, they then want you to charge by the day and not by the project
Yes.
or whatever else. And often you also take jobs at the beginning that are like that as well, where they're kind of like, you might be going in for them for a day a week to do stuff for them and you're just doing
Yes.
stuff. But actually what
Of
you want to
course.
get to is going, actually, so now like I've got like, let's say I've got 10 clients at the moment and they're all much bigger than they were a year ago, but I'm doing a not dissimilar amount of work because the value to them is really high, because actually they worry about their accounts all the time. So people generally, if they're not accountants, business owners really struggle with numbers, really struggle.
Right.
And a lot of that is a mental block about maths in general,
Right.
and about numbers. They kind of go, I'm just not very good at that. And you're like, but you don't need to be good at that. That's what I'm here for, is to guide you, to
There
say,
you
this
go.
is what you need to know. You need to know these 5 numbers. And we
Right.
need to know we're going to have enough cash, particularly, to last us, however long. But also, this is maybe your growth plans, and this is how this affects what it looks like. And I can,
Right.
I model all of, for some of my bigger clients, we would model all of that, or even my small clients,
Right.
where you go, actually, I might want to take on some associates. Well, how many would you need to make that worthwhile? How easy is it to
Right.
get
Right.
associates? And do you want to, because some people want to grow their business, but actually they still want to be doing the doing. They don't really want to just step into the managerial chief executive role. Well, we talk about
Right.
those sorts of things, but I think there's a real block on kind of numbers. It's like, I don't understand that, because there's a lot of
That's the
accounting
thing.
jargon,
Yes.
and
Yes. Yes.
you don't need to know all that. You don't need to
That's true.
understand all that
That's true.
accounting. That's my job, to make sure things look right. And I've looked at the balance sheet and done all the things. You only need to know we had a good month, because a lot of business owners actually just go, I don't know what the numbers are, and they need to. You need to know your numbers.
They have
It's
to.
really
You need to
important.
know your numbers. And it goes back to what we said about like glamorous, right? It's not really a glamorous role. It's not a glamorous job. That's why
I
people
love it.
shy away from it. Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I was going to say that you love it, but most people are like, like numbers again. I'm going to sit down. I actually have to sit down after this, do a bit of budgeting myself. Now, I'm not quite looking forward to it, but I know it's necessary. And you mentioned that in your latest, most recent episode of the Pricing Queen podcast, number 47, Busting Your Money Myths. And you talked about giving up your money power. And one of the myths where you said, like, I am rubbish with money. And that ties back to what you just said, where you're like, you don't have to know all that. This is where we come in. And I think another mental shift or mindset shift that we need to do is you stop saying that you are rubbish with money, because you don't have to be good at it, but you just have to know some of these numbers because they're very important. Talk to us a little bit about uh, in your LinkedIn bio, actually, it mentioned that you help non-financial managers in charities in particular to improve their financial understanding from the get-go. What are the common misconceptions or challenges that these managers face that you are trying to help them overcome, apart from that mindset shift that numbers are boring?
Yeah, I think it's almost more that numbers are boring, but it's almost like, I don't do that. A lot of people come into
Right,
these, you come
right.
into a managerial role, or running your own business, and you're like, oh, I don't do numbers. But if you in a small business, giving away that power is really, you mustn't, because if your accountant says, well, this is this and this and this, you need to know what that means.
Of
And
course.
if you
Yes,
don't,
that's
you need
true.
to be asking the questions. But a lot of the time you get to your accountant at the year end and they're like, they talk in words that you don't understand. They talk in,
Yep.
they like really confuse you.
Yep.
And a lot of the thing is about the difference between. So I think the biggest challenge for managers in bigger organizations, so like charities, is the difference
Right.
between profit and cash, and
Yes.
trying
Okay.
to talk to people about, right, well, you might have invoiced that. You might have invoiced that customer, but they haven't paid yet. So you haven't got the money in the bank, but you've still got to pay the payroll. Do you have enough? What are the kind of squeezes on your cash flow, which particularly happens at the end of a month, but also things like spending budgets, making sure that people actually spend money either over or under. You often get to the end of a year and a financial year, and people are like, oh my God, I've got all this money to spend. And then they go mad and spend it on all
Oh
sorts of
gosh.
slightly random things.
Oh wow.
Or you get the opposite problem where they spend all of it very early and it's not being managed very carefully. I mean, a lot of them have never really managed budgets and suddenly they've got this
Yes.
money to spend and it's a bit
Ooh.
daunting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's trying to give them enough of the basics, but also not overwhelming. You know, they don't need to know how double entry bookkeeping works or how
Of
the,
course.
you know, the accruals and the prepayment, all that accounting stuff. It's just like, you don't need to know all of that. What you need to know is who are you
Mm-hmm.
employing? How much is that going to cost you? What other costs are
Mm-hmm.
they going to be? And what does that look like? And really understand and get to grips with. And also how to make good buying decisions. How do you make a good
Mm-hmm.
buying decision around stuff? You know, what is the
Right.
return on investment on things? Are you expecting to
Mm-hmm.
get a return on investment?
Right.
You know, all of that stuff. If you take on a lower level employee versus a higher level employee, do you end up
Of
spending
course.
just as much on training? So all of that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of those sorts of decisions, I think, in bigger organizations.
And they really play a factor into all of this because again, you have to have those numbers. These are obstacles. And I think when it comes to like real true financial management, when it comes to bigger organization, that is when the real need of having experts like you come in and provide that kind of guidance, that foundation, and that kind of insight where, okay, writing the ship, right? It's like, okay, you come in there, you write the ship, and then this is what we're doing. Again, you don't have to be good at it. It's just me. That's my job, and that's what we're going to do. And I think that is one of the things that you are offering as well. You have a pricing calculator up on your website, Business Growth by Numbers, and it actually helps not just big organizations, but smaller entrepreneurs that maybe some of our audience and listeners might find some value in. So could you talk to us a little bit about that and how we can, take value? And why did you put up that pricing calculator up on your website?
So I find a lot. So it's good, particularly for service businesses. But it's. I
Mm-hmm.
think what I find a lot is that people massively underestimate how much
Mm-hmm.
they need to charge in order to live,
Right.
and they kind of go, "Oh, I'm covering my business costs," so they're covering the cost of their Zoom and their, all that sort of thing, and they're like,
Yes,
"But
yes,
are you
yes,
actually
yes.
paying yourself a decent salary?" And they, "Oh,
There you
oh,
go. That's the thing.
oh, no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
paying myself,
Mm-hmm.
1,000 a month, whatever it is." It's like, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not enough to live. How much do you actually need to live
Yes.
on? So it's kind of
There you
going
go.
back and going, well, actually, how much do you actually want to work? Like
Mm-hmm.
I work less now than I did in a job, because I take the
Uh-huh.
holidays off. I've got children and I want to have a lot of the holidays off. Um, and I work 4 days a week in term time and stuff like that. So you kind of go, well, what does your working life look like? Why did you set up your own business? Was it so that you could go and work in a beach bar every day? Was it so that you
Mm-hmm.
could travel and, do you therefore want to work less? Do you have caring responsibilities? All of that stuff. But there is often a
Right.
reason, even if it's just I was so fed up with it, I left or I got made redundant. But it's kind of going, actually, why did you set it up? And what do you want from it? And kind of going,
Yeah.
well, I only want to work like 4 hours a day, if that's what you
There you
wanted to
go.
do. And going, right, well, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well,
Mm-hmm.
if you only want 4 hours a day and I want to earn 100,000 a year, gonna need to put my prices up a bit. But it's also that thing of,
There you go.
even if people are quite early stage, you often find people are just not paying themselves and they're
That's
working
true.
really hard and quite long hours and not making
Mm-hmm.
enough money. And it's like, I think a lot of people don't really think about, well, all the business costs, all the costs of running your business. And have you reviewed those recently? Do you need
Yeah.
all of those? But also it's that thing of, well, actually, I need to pay myself. This is not otherwise it's an expensive hobby.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I like that. I like that. It's just a hobby at the end of the day. If you're not paying yourself, it's such a common situation, right?
Really?
Because you're like, I've got everything covered. I've got all this done. So, that's fine. But what profit are you really putting into it? Like, you don't really have a profit because you're the first employee at the very, very, at the, first and foremost, but you're not even paying yourself. So I think that's a danger in there where people don't know how to price themselves and price their services because like it's just, again, it turns into a hobby. It's not a business anymore,
Yeah.
right?
And
Sally,
early on, you
go
might
ahead.
find early on that sometimes is fine. And you might say, well, I need to take on this work because I need some work. But after that, you want to be going, right, okay, now I need to be paying myself. But it creeps. I think
Yes.
it often creeps.
That's true. Okay, okay, that's a great rounded reminder, because okay, sometimes maybe you don't pay yourself for a few months, maybe for the first year or so, but then you get more confident, get more clients, and then you'd be like, okay, now I'm very confident. I can put my price up, I can offer this value, and I can deliver it properly and price it properly to the potential clients and leads that I have. Sally, it's been great. You've been very lovely, and I love your insight into this. um, the way I like to wrap this up is I always ask the questions of looking ahead. When I say, what is the future aspirations of the pricing queen? Like, how do you see yourself in the future? You see yourself continuing this pricing mission that you are on, or probably going more deeper into business involvement, not just, surface level. I mean, you've got that pricing figured out, but you said you go into the business. That's the interesting part. That is the glamorous part. Where do you see yourself in the future? And where can we keep up with you, Sally? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on Instagram? Let us know.
Yeah, so I think for the future, I'm doing more kind of getting into the businesses. That's the bit I find really interesting. I'm still
Yes.
doing all the pricing stuff. I love that. Um,
Mhm.
but that's for much smaller businesses. But yeah, for the bigger businesses, I'm
Right.
doing much more of that. Kind of getting in. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm just Sally Farrant, and I'm Sally_Farrant_finance on Instagram, and you can find me at any
All
of those
right.
places.
Yes, and I would also invite our audience and listeners out there, check out Sally's website, businessgrowthbynumbers.com. Am I saying that right,
Yeah,
Sally?
that's right.
And
Yeah.
of course, that one that we mentioned as well, slash pricing calculator dot sign
Mm.
up. You guys go check it out. Everybody, I welcome you all to check out Miss Sally Ferran. Keep updated with her work and what she's been doing. Sally, it's been great. It's been a very smooth interview. I love your energy. I love your smiles and your enthusiasm. I mean, like, how often do you meet people who are enthusiastic about pricing? Right? We're talking about pricing and numbers. So, Sally, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. And to our audience and listeners out there, see you on the next one.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.